Goldbroker.com own real physical gold and silver bars stored outside of the banking system.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dan Popescu, and on behalf of Goldbroker.com, I have the pleasure today to have as a guest Egon von Greyerz. Egon is founder and managing partner of Matterhorn Asset Management and Gold Switzerland. He is also shareholder and member of the board of directors of Goldbroker.com. Egon forecasted the present problems in the world economy well over 10 years ago. In 2002, when gold was 300 per ounce, Matterhorn recommended to its investors to put 50% of their investment assets into physical gold stored outside of the banking system. So Egon has an incredible experience and knowledge about the gold market, and also timely. I don't know many people who got into the gold market so early, especially if I remember well at the beginning of 2002, gold was a relic of the past, an end of gold. So good morning, Egon.
Morning, Don, or good afternoon here in Switzerland. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Yes, gold was, at the time, there was no interest. Of course, gold was $300. I had been down to the $250, and the world had no interest in acquiring or buying gold as wealth preservation. I've always been interested in risk management and understanding the downside. So to me, it was an obvious thing because I already, certainly in the 90s, I saw that the world was moving towards some kind of disaster, financially and economically. You never know how long it will take, but you know that from a point of view of wealth preservation, you've got to have the insurance before the fire. So this is why in 2002, gold was underloved and undervalued. In my view, that was the best way for investors to protect their assets, as long as you hold gold in physical form, of course, and store it outside the banking system.
We have right now, at the end of Novembre, a referendum in Switzerland on gold and the central banks. And I think it's going to be a very important moment, especially if the initiative passes. We had a poll yesterday that seems to show a very close vote if it would happen today or yesterday. How do you see the referendum? And because I think that the central bank will have to buy about 1,500 tons of gold.
Yes, I'm actually actively involved in this referendum because I'm assisting the people who are behind the initiative. We were obviously extremely encouraged by the opinion poll yesterday. Now it's early days, and the sample was 13,000 people, so that is quite a big sample. But if they were typical for Switzerland as a whole, we don't know. But at this early stage, we have not yet, as the Yes Committee for the initiative, the campaign has not yet been launched. There will be a press conference tomorrow in Bern. And then there will be the traditional type of campaign with posters and leaflets to every household, which is the way that every campaign in Switzerland is being conducted. And thereafter, but also I've suggested, and this is what we are going to do, we are also going to have a social media campaign, which is not the way that Switzerland has done this in the past, because the 18 to 44 age group, they are not, as we know, worldwide. They don't read papers daily. They don't watch television. Everything is with their normally mobile phones or possibly tablets. So therefore, to reach them, you need to use social media like Facebook, for example, and you can reach 80% of the population here between 18 and 44 just on Facebook, or the voting population I'm talking about now. in that age group. So that's a very interesting addition, and we will see how that will work. But overall, as I said, for not even having launched a campaign yet formally, that we are very pleased, especially since there is not a high level of awareness of this campaign yet. You know, the Swiss obviously has an affinity with gold. It's a tradition to own gold in Switzerland, although in later years has been less so because it's been more printed money here, like in other countries. But so, as I said, the campaign is significant for Switzerland, and it could be significant for the world as a whole. So it'll be very interesting, and we look forward to the next 6 weeks or so.
I assume that if it's a negative vote, it's not going to change much. But I think that if there is a positive vote, it could the market try to anticipate the possibility of the Central Bank of Switzerland buying 1,500 tons of gold?
I think if it is yes, I think it would be a game changer, not because just of the purchase of gold. Now, you know, as part of the initiative, and as to be said, the initiative, which is, as I said, a private initiative, if it passes, it becomes part of the Swiss constitution. So the central bank or the government cannot change it. The only way to change it is for another referendum, national referendum. You know, it is a very, very significant. I think that, you know, the purchase of 1,500 to 1,700 tons, it obviously depends on the price of gold and the also the size of the balance sheet of the national bank. But they have, in accordance with the initiative, they have 5 years to purchase this gold, so they don't have to do it tomorrow. But they must do it within 5 years. That will be in the law. So, but I think it's not just the fact that they're buying 1,700 tons, but I think it's the fact that this will be a trend setter for central banks worldwide, that they, number one, which is part of the initiative, will want to bring their gold back to their home country. As you know, most central banks today hold gold outside their own country, primarily in London, New York, some of it in Paris, some of it in Canada. In the case of Switzerland, they hold 1/3, roughly, of their gold in the UK and in Canada. And now the Swiss National Bank has said that, well, we need to hold it there if we need to sell it quickly. But first of all, you know, central banks should not treat gold as a toy that they can just buy and sell you know, whenever they want to. They should actually use that gold to protect the finances of the country and their currency. So, and of course, we know that it's not a valid argument that you have to have it in a different country to sell it. You can sell it from home also. So, I mean, the Swiss National Bank and the government are against the initiative for the simple reason that they want to do what every single government and central bank in the world, in the Western world, is doing today, which is print money, buy votes, as I often say, because that's really what they're doing. When times are bad in the country and the finances are bad, they print money to please the people and to buy votes. And that's what's happening in Switzerland also. Now, Switzerland's central banks or national bank's balance sheet is in relative terms bigger than any Western European countries. In order to keep the value of the Swiss franc low, they have printed 400 billion Swiss francs since 2008. In order to buy primarily euro assets but also some other currencies. Now, because of the peg to the euro of 120. Now, for decades, the Swiss franc has been a strong currency and Switzerland has been a strong economy. I remember when I started working in Switzerland in 1969, there was $1 was 4 Swiss francs 30. today $1 is 95 Swiss cents. So you can see that there's been an enormous appreciation of the Swiss franc during that period, and what more importantly, during the whole of that period, Switzerland has prospered, had a strong currency, low inflation, and a strong economy. So sadly now, the central bankers are very often with investment bank backgrounds or hedge fund backgrounds. So they are now using the same principles around the world, the Goldman Sachs type principles of manipulating the economy, manipulating the currency. And they think that that is necessary to keep the Swiss franc weak. You know, have they not read their history books? Because in their history books, it says very clearly, and they don't have to go back very far, it says very clearly that Switzerland has prospered with a strong currency. I know no example long-term where a country has prospered that has a weak currency and a country that prints a lot of money. The very short-term exception of that is the US, because they have luckily still the reserve currency of the world. I wouldn't say they're prospering, but they're still managing to run an economy with massive debts. But Switzerland, as I said, relatively, Switzerland's central bank balance sheet is about 80% of GDP. Now, 80% of GDP, you relate that to the Fed, which we're all complaining about having printed too much money of $4 trillion as against a GDP of a bit over 16 trillion. So in the US, it's only 25%. The balance sheet of the Fed is only 25% of GDP, and in Switzerland, it's 80. So Switzerland is out of sync. It's printing too much money, which is too much. If something happens to the Swiss franc, if it starts really strengthening, they have 400 billion worth of Swiss francs assets that could go down in value dramatically. Plus, of course, not only that in currency terms, but also they're holding, pretty, I won't say worthless, but risky euro debt or debt instruments. So it's really unfortunate as a Swiss to see your own country having gone from being the most prudent and conservative in the world when it comes to financial and economic policy to now doing what everybody else is doing. But as I said, the banking sector here is too big for the country. The Swiss banks are about 7 times GDP. I mean, this is in line with Cyprus. That obviously almost that went under more or less the banking system there. So if we get a 2007 to 9 again, which I think we will get at some point worldwide, then the Swiss banking system is very exposed because of its size in relation to the size of the Swiss economy.
You mentioned something, and I had a few questions in the last few days from people. Is it possible for the Swiss government, how is it, how is the referendum working in Switzerland? The questions that I was getting is it possible for the government to try to stop to reverse the referendum or take some action to cancel the effect of the referendum?
Good point, and this is why Switzerland is such a wonderful country. Here you really have people power. A private initiative like this one. Anyone can start that, and you can have it on any issue that is important to you, and all you need to do, an individual can do it, anyone can do it, is to get a list of 100,000 signatures. If you get that in favor of whatever proposal you have, in this case the Golden Initiative, once you have that list, you have the right to have a referendum. You might have to wait a year or 2 years maximum, because there's a timetable. But then, and once, if that initiative passes, then, as I said before, it becomes part of the constitution. So the government cannot stop it now. They have to accept the referendum exactly as it stands today, with no alterations, and they cannot, if it passes as law, as part of the constitution, that they cannot in any way change it. All they can do then is to propose another referendum. The people has to decide, not the government.
Some people were mentioning that a campaign against it, especially with the recent poll that showed that it was favorable to the initiative, that you'll have, like in Scotland, a lot of the American government and other governments trying to intervene in the press. The Central Bank of Switzerland tried to wake up and start a major attack against the initiative.
Yeah, absolutely right. And they've been doing, I mean, first of all, there's no other side here. There's no official other side. There is the initiative and the yes side. And then the other side is the government. I mean, they are not supposed to officially campaign against this, but they are, of course, and have been in the last few weeks, making statements about the fact that number one, the finance minister said, for example, that gold is a risky asset and therefore we shouldn't hold gold. The funny thing is that if you look at gold in Swiss francs has appreciated by 200% in the last 15 years, or the other way around. The Swiss franc is down 50% against gold in the same period. So it's not, and over 100 years, it's even a lot worse. And the Swiss franc is down 90% against gold. So, you know, the finance minister has got it wrong. It's the Swiss franc that is a risky asset. It is not gold. But this is propaganda from the government. And the National Bank is saying, of course, that this will be disastrous for the country if we have a strong Swiss franc, and we must be able to have freedom to manipulate our balance sheet and print money when we want, etc., and not hold 20% gold in our balance sheet as is proposed in the referendum. So that propaganda started already a few weeks ago and it is continuing. But the interesting thing is, in spite of that, because there has not been a lot of in the press of the yes side of this, because that, as I said, that campaign is starting tomorrow actually with a press conference. So in spite of that, Swiss are very independent people. They don't like to be told by the government what to do. So consequently, if you see, you know, this poll here is still slightly in favor of the yes vote. So people have clearly not listened to what the government has said. But it's early days, so we have to take this very seriously. There will be obviously a lot more propaganda from the government. And hopefully we will have a chance on the yes side to put forward our arguments also in a sensible way so that the people understand.
Can I ask you a last question? We're short of time, but I have to ask you that question. I want to know your views about the Central Bank of China accumulating gold. We haven't heard anything, we don't know, but I think it's going to be a very important, just like the referendum in Switzerland, an announcement from the Central Bank. How do you see the role of the Bank of China, of the Chinese, in buying gold for their reserves? We don't know very much. What's your view about it?
I think it's such a fascinating game going on here with the West basically losing all its gold, most of it secretly and tacitly, because they're not, the bullion banks or central banks are not telling you if the gold that they have leased to the market or possibly sold to the market, how much they have, because no central bank in the world basically will allow a proper physical audit of the gold. So, but, you know, the estimates are, I mean, there's been even that there are a lot of gold has gone out of bullion banks, out of central banks. Before, of course, the interesting thing is when that happened before, it was just leased or sold and bought between central banks or bullion banks, and it all stayed in London, most of it. Now, and therefore it didn't really matter because it was always belonged to somebody. But what's happened now is that China's been the big buyer, and they have taken physical delivery, often via Switzerland, because when they buy the big 400-ounce bars, that they are broken down into kilobars. This is what China wants. So, and we've seen that trade. And even last month, I just saw the statistics. There was quite a high number of gold from from London via Switzerland to be refined or broken down and then sent on to China. So that trade is continuing, and China is clearly building up a massive stock of gold. And as you said, I mean, we don't know how much they have. They have officially 1,000 tons. The estimates are that they have a lot more than that. They might have 4,000 tons. They might have more than that. And the US certainly does not have the 8,000 tons they say they have. So there's a very major shift in the balance here of gold, and there's a lot of double counting in gold. I'm sure that the same gold is counted by a central bank and by an ETF and by a bullion bank in the West. But China actually is consistently shipping gold and buying gold to the East, and I think at some point in the next year, 2 years, or longer, the market will absolutely panic when they realize that there's very little physical gold left in the West.
Thank you very much, Egon. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have. So on behalf of goldbroker.com, I thank you very much for your insight on the gold market. And I will look forward to asking you and speaking to you after the referendum. Thank you very much, Egon.
Thank you, Don. With pleasure speaking to you. I'll be very happy to speak to you again after 30th of November.